Yan, hello everyone. Kamusta kayo dyan mga ka-Haydarians? Mga kametas sa YouTube at sa Facebook. I hope medyo na-survive yun na yung traffic. Friday traffic. Medyo napapawisan tayo sa traffic talaga kahit nakalusot ka na. You're still gonna try to figure out whether, you know, grabe. Anyway, balikan natin itong issue na to, which is of course as we mark the anniversary of the passing of arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, local government unit officials in recent memory. No, and arguably you could say Jesse Robredo was really the one that got away, and in this case, of course, very tragically. And as far as Jesse Robredo is concerned, I think he's the only contemporary Filipino leader I know that has attracted so much attention, not only among uh, political circles, pero pati sa mga academics. So kung nag-research ka about public administration studies, no? Public policy studies, pag tinignan mo yung mga journal articles, pag tinignan mo yung mga sinusulat ng mga ibang academics, yung mga dayuhan na academics, mga ASEAN na academics, mga academics na galing sa Thailand, sa iba't ibang bansa sa ating rehiyon, may mga mahanap ka, no? May mga mahanap ka, more than one, actually more than a few, about the so-called Naga model, right? So, if you look at it, there's no one who comes even close to it. I don't know of any contemporary leader, no, sa Pilipinas who has been seen as a role model for governance, even by scholars based in more developed countries, right? That's the fascinating thing. So it's not like yung mga scholars from, I don't know, fourth world countries are studying us to say, oh, paano naman tayo maging third world? No. You have scholars based in first world, second world, whatever you want to call it, or upper middle income countries and OECD countries. Pinag-aralan itong Naga model, and they see it as a kind of a good governance, but not only good but also effective governance, no, and very effective public administration model for other countries, especially in other developing countries. Now, to be honest, ako kasi, for a very long time, obviously yung focus natin more international affairs, focus natin more foreign policy, but I got to know about Jesse Robredo. I think the first time was when he had this interview with Tito Boy Abunda, no? Hindi Tito Boy Soto, no? Tito Boy Abunda. Kumali naman tayo. And it was I suggest you guys check it out if it's available on YouTube and all. But it was a very thorough, comprehensive, and very inspiring interview, no? Dun sa mga nanood nito. I hope there's a copy of that somewhere that we can watch, that you guys can watch. Because dito, on one hand, nakita ko, in fairness kay Tito Boy, he really knows his stuff, and he's really a good talk show host. At the same time, it was also quite a revelation that back then, of course, this is before the tragic demise of former Interior Secretary Jesse Robredo. You'll get to know also gaano kalalim yung pag-intindi, no, ni Jesse Robredo, the late Jesse Robredo, dito sa mga usapin governance, no. So you had the DILG secretary who was not only appointed because malapit siya sa president and all. In fact, my understanding is that Jesse Robredo was always a very independent-minded figure. He was very much his own guy. It just happened that, he was in similar circles that overlap eventually with President Benigno Aquino. And I think his appointment by President Benigno Aquino was more a recognition of yung merit ni Jesse Robredo as a local government unit, guro for that matter, no? Rather than because malapit siya sa akin, tumulong siya sa akin sa elections, siya yung campaign manager ko yung elections kasi, di ba, usually mga DLG secretary, or at least more than once, yung DLG secretary, ito yung mga campaign managers ng successful candidates. So, sometimes the DLG secretary goes more like a kind of a booty prize, no? It's like a war booty, rather than really a reflection of merit. And dito sa case ni Jesse Robredo, I mean, I really didn't know much about him back then. And then Tito Boy Abunda was introducing Jesse Robredo and was talking about his credentials. And he's like, his credentials are quite impressive. Obviously, just on the paper pa lang, impressive na siya. Now, obviously, for those who actually properly study the situation in Naga, the development of Naga throughout the years, no? I mean, you'll see na hindi lang sa magaling ito sa ano lang, on the paper. Definitely more than just on the paper, no? So we're talking about a person, obviously, I mean, of course, the JF Kennedy School, so Harvard University. He took his public administration there. He also had a public administration, sorry, business administration degree from University of the Philippines, and then he had industrial management, engineering, mechanical engineering degrees naman sa De La Salle. So he ticked all the boxes, business administration, public administration, engineering background. So usually when you look at countries na very successful in terms of late industrialization, for instance, China, no, or even many of our neighbors, makikita mo na engineers tend to play a very important role. Literally people with engineering background. So I think Deng Xiaoping, for instance, had an engineering background because there's something with engineers, right? They have a clear vision, the blueprint, they have a kind of a system to how do they do things, and that's how essentially they implement it in terms of governance. No, so usually doctors or engineers do pretty well as politicians. It's way better than lawyers, right? Because I think the training you get as a lawyer is quite different from actually administration. It's more like, oh, ano yung mga meron batas dyan? Well, ano yung mga loopholes dyan, right? No offense, no? But I think engineers, economists, people with public administration backgrounds, they really get to understand ano yung mga katotohanan, no? At ano yung mga best practices in terms of governance, effective and good governance, by looking at, all around the world. Because kung lawyer ka, you're really, you're kind of confined dun sa jurisprudence, dun sa yung training mo. Of course, our jurisprudence is quite similar to that of the United States, and then there's also the Spanish legacy, etc. So medyo constrained ka. While yung mga more engineering, economics, public administration background, they have a much broader view, much more flexibility, much more dynamism. Obviously, this is a generalization, maybe applies to 6 out of 10, but nevertheless, it's something important to keep in mind. Now, you're also looking at someone here who won multiple awards as a local government unit. So this was not just about the guy having fancy degrees on the paper. Marami kang mahanap ng mga fancy degrees dahil mayaman yung tatay or swerte magaling magsulat ng mga application letter or operator. No. So it's not just the degrees, no. The CVs is also about actual achievements, no. So and it was internationally recognized. So yung Asia Week magazine, no, in 1999 pa lang, na-recognize nila yung very successful stint ni Jesse Robredo as a local government unit. So he actually won yung first mayoral race niya, and he became the youngest city mayor at the age of 29. Imagine. So 20s pa lang, meron na siyang solid. I mean, Naga City is pretty big developed city, no? He already had this solid experience. And the reality was, of course, Naga before Jesse Robredo was nowhere close to realizing its immense potential. And yung multiple terms, no? 6 3-year terms as mayor ni Jesse Robredo was absolutely transformational. Again, the evidence is absolutely there. Whether in terms of participatory democracy, ensuring that yung mga communities on the ground have a say, no, in terms of how budget allocations and prioritizations are determined. In terms of, for instance, making sure that there's some basic infrastructure for healthcare, for education. And for me, I mean, what really made also Jesse Robredo and the Robredo family in general very, very unique in the best way possible is clearly there was no attempt to leverage itong first generation success into a multi-generation Trapo style dynastic politics. There was no such thing, right? I mean, if you look at the Robredos, did they ever have simultaneous occupation of different government offices? Or if they had, how long? As far as I know, wala. Habang yung mga iba na galit supposedly sa oligarchy, ay yung anak niya na dito, yung isa anak niya nandyan, siya yung dati ganito, ganyan, di ba? Like, so he did not form a political dynasty in any sense of the word, right? And that is Mandelian in its sense, because one of the things that I appreciated about Mandela was that he never push his own children or wife and etc. into politics, or to leverage his name and all and create his own dynasties. I also credit President Ramos, Fidel Ramos, also for going down that kind of Mandela road. But Jesse Robredo also did that. So it's not just yung mga awards niya, no? Yung mga 10 outstanding young persons of the world. Oh, by the way, you also have the same award. Outstanding Young Men of the Philippines, yes, we have the same award. Yung 1998 Conrad Adenauer, mamabuli na naman ako. Yung 1998 Conrad Adenauer Medal of Excellence as Most Outstanding City Mayor of the Philippines, and the first ever Dangal ng Bayan Award of the Civil Service Commission. No? Nung 2008, he was conferred an honorary Doctor of Humanities degrees by the Far Eastern University. So, this next level, without a question, talagang next level pagdating sa recognitions, but also next level in terms of actual track record on the ground. And you could see like Naga, up until today, is an inspiration for a lot of new stars at the LG level. Most notably, of course, Vico Soto, right? So if you look at Vico Soto, he very much cited Naga model and Robredo as his own inspiration, and now we're saying that. As far as Vico Soto is concerned, he's trying to continue that legacy. Although my understanding is that with Mayor Soto, he's also looking at yung legacy ng kanyang great was it grandfather or something, that the late Senator Soto. This is back in the day, no, the grand days of Senator Soto back there. I mean, no offense to Tito Soto, I'm talking about the other one, right? So this is what's very important with Jesse Robredo is that hanggang ngayon, nakikita mo na yung mga rising star LGUs directly, openly, or at least indirectly, are drawing lessons from him. Because Jesse Robredo was able to show throughout year after year after year that you can be very successful mayor without being trapo, without creating dynasties, by actually being more progressive and democratic. And for me, the most impressive thing about the Robredos was their lifestyle, right? You never saw those kind of armored vehicle, 10 different security guards, etc., that you tend to see with a lot of LGU leaders. Alam niyo na, connect the dots. Or yung mga fake na tatay style na pa-humble, pero pag tinignan mo yung motorcycle or something, di ba? So, legit. And then for anyone who knows about it, while Jesse Robredo was there at the forefront, Leni Robredo back then was acting as a grassroots level lawyer, no, helping yung mga magsasaka, yung mga oppressed communities, etc. So, this is it. I mean, there was really something special about it, and you could see why yung mga the Robredo sisters, the next generation are the kind of really achievers and beacons of this beacons of really the best in the Filipino, right? The best in us, right? So, for me, things could have been very, very different. I think I could have seen Jesse Robredo really as the perfect person to run in 2016. Because he had exactly that kind of mayor exhibit A appeal that Tatay brought into table in 2016. Although I'll raise a lot of questions about how really, stellar, forget about the human rights aspect of the exhibit A of Tatay Digong. But as for Jesse Robredo is concerned, he had exhibit A in your face of very successful, progressive, and globally renowned kind of LGU level executive experience. Not to mention, as DILG secretary, he scaled it up on a national scale. Now, who knows what would have been the success rate, but I think he could have easily gone down as one of the most successful DLG secretaries. So he ticked all of the boxes, right? And at the same time, he was independent enough and progressive enough to, I think, be able to essentially create some healthy level of distance and assert a certain level of independence doon sa discredited liberalismo na, of course, naging dahilan na talagang napumuntang voters to the other side by 2016. So, I think he had enough of independence. He had enough of his own success. He had enough of audacity and panache, no? And I would then be surprised if he had also a very effective campaign team that projected decisiveness, compassion, but also competence. All of those elements were there. And let's be honest, Leni Robredo's successful campaign in 2016 and her also ending up as number two in the very difficult race last year, despite all of those limitations and structural obstacles, etc. In many ways, this just affirms the power, the influence, and the success that Jesse Robredo established during his own time when he had a shot at holding offices. And he was, in many ways, for me, clearly should have been considered for presidency if he survived all the way to 2014, 15, and 16. No, so if you ask me who are in terms of the best presidents we never had, I mean, many names come to your mind. I hear a lot about Senator Raul Rocco. A lot of people still talk about Gibo Chodoro, that they felt he was the smartest guy in 2010, although, we can talk a lot about ideology, he was running under, and Gibo is still in the mix, and who knows, he could run still for Senate in 2025 and still consider the presidency down the road. And then, of course, there are many after elections last year who feel that the Totga was Leni Robredo. Now, my opinion, if you were to ask me, is like Jesse Robredo was really a proven man, a proven leader, both on paper, at the same time in terms of the actual performance on the ground. And if you don't believe me, look at objective academic studies by foreign experts and academics, not even Filipino experts, but foreign experts and academics. Now, luckily, there's the Jesse Robredo Foundation and kind of a think tank there. I think they're based in LaSalle, no? Yeah, because I got to know about that foundation when I was teaching LaSalle back in the day. So I hope instead of, sabi nga ni Sanchez Romel, instead of going into all of that conspiracy, I don't want to go down that road because that's a very toxic conversation. That's not the best way to honor the legacy of Jesse Robredo by going into those kinds of dark marites. No, I think the Jesse Robredo Foundation is a good way of kind of incubating, no, yung the kind of gold standard LGU and managerial public administration skills that he represented. My sense, though, is that the Jesse Robredo legacy can even be further, right, mainstreamed, and that legacy can be even more inspirational on a wider scale across political spectrums if people who inherited the mantle of Jesse Robredo, no, or organizations that are affiliated in a sense, no, if all of them can come together and work, no, with new generation of rising star local government units leaders. And my sense is, to a certain degree, that's happening. And my sense is there's a huge opportunity right now, especially with the rise of people like Mayor Magalong, for instance. Again, I don't want to over promote or something like that. So if you look at it, I think people like Mayor Magalong, in one or another, my sense is they have a lot of respect for what Jesse Robredo brought to the table, as much as they also very much respect and have a lot of appreciation and due respect, no, for Leni Robredo, no. The thing I said with Leni Robredo, she didn't have the chance to serve in as in executive positions in as much as Jesse Robredo, and that's why many are saying perhaps the best thing forward is for Leni to be in Naga, serve in executive position, or if not Leni, the next generation, because she has three amazingly well-educated and embodiments of good governance in the next generation of Robredos. Because I think that's another way of continuing this. But for me, the potential of the Jesse Robredo brand, gold standard of governance, should go way beyond all of these petty fights of Dilaw versus Pula, this versus that, and all those kind of binaries, and a lot of times false binaries. I think there's a very strong post-partisan, non-partisan, gold standard good governance potential to what Jesse Robredo brought to the table. And this despite his very unfortunate tragic demise, I think it's incumbent, definitely incumbent upon whoever cares for good governance, whoever cares for decisive leadership, whoever cares for the right role model that brings two important elements in Philippine politics, which is decisive leadership, yung may kakayanan, at saka yung malinis na gobyerno, yung non-corrupt, and putting these two things together, right? hindi natin sinasabi na santo siya. I mean, no one is perfect. I'm sure everyone can come up with a story that this and this and this and no one is saying perfect siya. I'm saying within the realm of actual politics, I think he came closest to kind of a gold standard of good governance, right? And had he had the chance to be the president of the Philippines, I think he would have shown the way in terms of leveling up the Philippines. Because all countries at some point were where we are today, right? Or even way worse than where we are today. And then some transformational leaders came in. And then these transformational leaders got to inspire a new generation of leaders. And then these transformational leaders were able to incubate their good governance in the institution of the states, of the state and beyond. Kaya biglang you know, nag-leap forward, no? Nag-quantum leap yung mga bansa nila. So, this kind of you can call it institutional drift. I don't want to use jargons and all, but history is replete with these transformational leaders who suddenly push the country in the right direction. In the same way that history is replete, and unfortunately, in the Philippines, multiple times with, you know, Tatay-style politics, which pushes the country in quite, you know, to put it nicely, ambivalent directions. No, so that's yun talagang kulang sa atin na multiple transformational leaders from top to the bottom, and then also grassroots movement, all of them coming together, and also this effort to make sure that good governance cases that we have had do not get, you know, sucked into vortex of partisan politics and all of that nonsense out there. I mean, of course, partisan politics is inevitable. I understand that, but heavily personalized, fake news driven partisan politics is not only toxic, it's inimical to our democratic growth, no? And I think this is where there has to be really a concerted effort to make sure that the Jesse Robredo gold standard of governance is really mainstream in the best way possible, in the most non-partisan way possible. And I think if you ask any top Filipino leader, you know, in their hearts of hearts, you know, what you really thought about the track record and potential of Jesse Robredo as a top national leader, they would acknowledge it. Of course, on the surface, unfortunately, puro tayo may conspiracy theory, partisanship, you know, all sorts of nonsense out there. But I think in their hearts of hearts, any Filipino leader worth his salt or her salt would acknowledge that there's really something there with Jesse Robredo. Kaya whenever I hear people saying, sa Pilipinas, mga politiko ganyan, 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 hopeless case, lahat sila ganyan, I will always immediately think about someone like Jesse Robredo and say, not necessarily. And as unfortunate and tragic as it was that he was not able to do it, you still have a lot of people who are trying to make sure that legacy is kept alive, and they'll continue that. All right, on that note, thank you very much again, because hoping later on we'll have a conversation again. We'll have another conversation with another guest, and this time again, balikan natin si Ronald Diamas, who was the Secretary of Political Affairs under Aquino. So he had his own interaction with Jesse Robredo. Pag-usapan natin yan. Balikan din natin itong issue ng ayungin, patriotism, a lot of these issues that I think we still have to really get points of view from different sides. No? So please, you know, stick around. Shortly from now, we're gonna have another discussion. But before that, I just felt it's important, habang nasa traffic pa yung iba, it's important for me to just share my 2 cents dito about the kind of amazingly transformational leadership that Jesse Robredo represents as an archetype of good governance, but also in terms of how to make sure that can serve as an inspiration for a new generation of leaders, not one person or two, but a new generation of leaders and all. Kaya mahalaga yung Jesse Robredo Foundation or all of the organizations and individuals affiliated with it. Try to mainstream this as much as possible and bring in people from different, not only walks of life, but different political persuasions. That's very, very important. And to end on this note, yung kay Mayor Magalong na Mayors for Good Governance, I see that very much as a continuation of what Jesse Robredo had in mind and what Jesse Robredo represents. Again, thank you very much. Maraming salamat dun sa mga sumusuporta sa atin. Very, very much appreciated. So let's continue this conversation later on. Shortly, we'll take a short break and then talk to you guys with our guest. Maraming salamat and God bless, and talk to you soon.